all around the world. People and hungry children cry. We'll sing out loud for justice and development, and all the rights of all the people are. So sing a song for women everywhere. Let's it ring around the world and never cease. So sing a song for women everywhere. Equality, development, and peace. Women now are working to build a better world, where the love of peace can rest on every shore. Women lay down their weapons, learn to love and share, and people work to bring an end to war. So sing a song for women everywhere. Let it ring around the world and never cease. So sing a song for women everywhere. Equality, development, and peace. So sing a song for women everywhere. Let it ring around the world and never cease. So sing a song for women everywhere. Equality, development, and peace.
Thank you. You may be seated. Good morning again to honorable members and distinguished guests. Welcome to the Tripartite Women's Caucus Summit. Before we begin, I'd like to welcome the Speaker of the KZN Legislature, Honorable Nontabengo Boyce, the Deputy Speaker of the KZN Legislature, Honorable Mambato Tembe, Honorable T. Colley, Deputy Chief Whip of KZN Legislature, and the other members of the Parliament from the KZN Legislature. Guests from the Zimbabwean Parliamentary Women's Caucus, led by Honorable Mbohwa, the Zimbabwean Parliamentary Women's Caucus Chairperson and the member of the SADC Parliamentary Forum. Honorable Otilia Sibanda, Vice Chairperson of Zimbabwe's Women's Caucus, and Honorable Omega Hungwe, member of the Zimbabwean Women Parliamentary Caucus. Ms. Precious Bongile Edwa, ZWPC Desk Officer and Research Officer. Welcome to Durban, KwaZulu-Natal. Dr. Hazel Gooding from the UN Women South Africa Multi-Country Office, Deputy Representative. Ms. Claire Musundo, the Program Manager responsible for the Regional Women's Caucus and the Regional Parliamentary Model Laws Oversight at the SADC Parliamentary Forum. Ms. Angela Wambugu, Team Leader Governance of UN Women Kenya. Ms. Mary Izo from the Center of the Study of Violence and Reconciliation, Johannesburg. Media houses present, DDP CSO partners, as well as activists and citizens and other distinguished guests. Today I'm humbled to stand before you, a special group of parliamentarians, a group which I would consider an endangered species, that is women parliamentarians. What a rare species, not only within the context of being African female politicians, but across the globe. The picture and the numbers remain largely similar in that we remain a minority. And in some countries, we're almost extinct. With the world population figure standing at an estimated 8.2 billion, the ratio between males and females stands at approximately 49.72 for females. However, this is close to a 50% split, which is seriously distorted when it comes to leadership in politics. Out of 193 member state countries of the United Nations, women are only in leadership in 29 countries. This is a mere 15%. Put it differently, only 85% of the member state countries have males in positions of political leadership. There are only 15 countries in which women hold 50% or more of the positions of cabinet. In the rare instance that women are placed in positions of leadership, The tendency is to ring fence their participation in the broader political sphere and allocate them to what is referred to as soft portfolios, which are considered to be women's terrain. The limited number of women in politics and the absence of women in leadership in politics cannot be accepted as a coincidence of nature, but as a deliberate and an intentional phenomenon that cannot be ignored and cannot be accepted, which is why we're here today. What a pleasure it is to be in a room full of women who are committed to the agenda of eliminating women's marginalization in parliament, politics, and society at large. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to invite Nyasha, Mpani, who will give us an overview of the summit, as well as our objectives and expected outcomes. Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, honorable members, and good morning to you all. It's a pleasure to see some of the familiar faces. I think we met with some of our colleagues when we visited Zimbabwe for a study tour with the KZN Legislature sometime last year. It's unfortunate that we could not have the Malawi Caucus as well. We also did visit them sometime last year with the KZN Legislature. It's quite an honor to see the bond being strengthened between the three caucuses, which we started initially last year. We were daydreaming, but eventually the dream did come to fruition. So it's an honor now to see our Zim colleagues also visiting the KZN Legislature for such an important summit. So in terms of the overview of the summit's objectives and the expected outcomes, the summit aims to build a powerful regional platform that enables collaboration, exchange, and joint action across borders, addressing common challenges and opportunities for women's empowerment and political participation. We are here to explore solutions that amplify the role of women leaders and strengthen advocacy for gender equality through our region. The objectives. The objectives of this summit are fourfold. Number one, we want to share experiences and success stories. So each of the caucuses will reflect on achievements and challenges in advancing women's empowerment, giving us insights into best practices and lessons learned. Number two, we want to identify areas for regional collaboration, where we will work together to develop joint initiatives that strengthen the collective influence of women's caucuses across the region. It's quite fortunate that both the caucuses are just coming out of an election, both the Zim and South African ones. So I'm pretty sure that you've got so many similar challenges and stories to share in terms of how the political campaign process has been for both of the caucuses. We also want to enhance women's leadership and representation. The summit will explore strategies for increasing women's political participation and ensuring their leadership in decision-making process. I know from the figures of Zimbabwe that after the election, the number of women parliamentarians who managed to be in parliament has decreased. Not sure of the KZ1. So this might be a platform to identify what went wrong and what can we make right moving forward into the next elections. Building strategic partnerships, we will engage with development partners, civil society, and government institutions to support and sustain initiatives that empower women and girls. What are our expected outcomes? Our expected outcomes include we need to come up with a roadmap of joint initiatives and programs that leverage the strengths of our three caucuses. How best can we be able to promote women participation in politics? How can we shoulder each other in the different problems and challenges that women and girls are facing in our different countries? And can you also be able, in other folks from other countries, to be part of such an initiative? We also need to come up with clear strategies for boosting women's leadership, particularly within the political and governance sectors in our respective countries. We need to strengthen networks and partnerships among women's organizations. That's why we've got Mary from the Center of Violence and Reconciliation. She'll shed light into what her organization is doing in terms of trying to support women and girls empowerment. And it might also be an opportunity for members of parliament to be able to see the synergies they can work with such like-minded organizations. We're also going to see how best we can come up with mentorship opportunities for young women and leaders, paving the way for a new generation of empowered female leadership. I think Mary is going to touch more on this, since the organization also is in the process of mentoring young women leaders in South Africa. So these are the objectives and the expected, So this summit will also serve as a safe and inclusive space for open dialogue. We need to foster connections and ideas that will guide our collective efforts in the years ahead. Together, we're going to aim to consolidate our voices into a unified regional movement, ensuring that women's contributions are recognized, their challenges are addressed, and their potential is fully realized. I thank you and I look forward to our discussions over the next days. So let's make this summit a platform for meaningful progress and lasting impact. I thank you so much.
Right. Good morning, and good morning, members of parliament from KZN Legislature and from our partners from Zimbabwe, our distinguished guests from different partners that we work with, the media, academia, political parties, and those who have come from the UN agencies, United Nations Women, who are going to be introduced later this morning. Mine is to say that we are so grateful from the DDP point of view that what started just like a thought in a room like this one has become to what you see here today. So I'd like to ask this room to give the DDP team a round of applause. And I'm saying this because in this room is Africa, united Africa. And it's even more importantly, that is not happening in Addis Ababa. It's happening in KZN. That tells us that there is a lot of potential that we have as a country and as a people, if we can read from the same hymn sheet, which is why we are here. And even though our program focuses on enhancing women participation in parliamentary politics and decision-making, it's one single step in the right direction that we have desired to see, not only just in our country here in South Africa, not only in our city in Durban, not only in our province here in KZN, but across the continent, where we see women taking serious leadership positions with decision-making power, that they're able to promote active citizenship, good governance, and ethical leadership. As DDP, we are convinced that this is the beginning of a great move that is going to bring together women caucuses from across the continent to share their experiences, just like my colleague just said, but more importantly, to enhance their own participation in legislatures. And maybe I should just pause there to say, as we're sitting here today, I have requests from women caucuses from Rwanda, from Seychelles, from Mauritius, Eswatini, Uganda, and Tanzania. This is a beginning of a great move. What we are proud of is that you're part of this great move and that you've seen value in this dream. And I would like to take this opportunity, first of all, to recognize our partners in this initiative, the KZN Legislature, and particularly the Multi-Party Women Caucus, who have partnered with us and worked with us in this road. And as you know, anything new has its own teething problems, but that we have overcome all of those, the fact that you're seated in this room. So I'd like to thank Honorable Boyce, the Speaker of the KZN Legislature, the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Tembe, for working with us. They traveled with us last year to Malawi and Harare, and they have continued to support us even now in their new roles. And we appreciate that very much. Together, the members of parliament from the KZN Legislature who have also joined us today. And of course, not forgetting our counterparts from Zimbabwe, Women Parliamentary Caucus, who have really also supported us. Also to mention in the abstention in this room, those from Malawi. Our anticipation is that this will become a creative environment for all our women caucuses, not only just in this room, and these three that are here present, but those who are already knocking the door to enter and become part of this great initiative that we believe is bringing women parliamentarians together. Our expectation is that we'll continue to strengthen our collective capacities to be able to present the interest of our citizens and our constituencies in the right perspective, with boldness and with courage. We also expect that it's also going to be a learning opportunity, because we know that the context of our African continent is the same. We may be geographically dispersed, but the challenges that women experience across our continent are similar. So we believe that coming together is not just to enjoy our partnership and just to enjoy hospitality, but it's also to look at those critical challenges that are facing women and girls across our continent that can be able to be solved and resolved because of our collective capabilities, political and otherwise, and be able to create hopeful communities for women across our continent. From our DDP point of view, we remain very, very committed to this process. And we want to thank our partners who have walked with us this road so far, our funders who have put money. I remember when we were in Harare, this idea looked very huge. And we didn't even know where we're going to start. I didn't know which doors to knock for the funding to come through and all that. But we're in this room, which means it happened. And greater things are going to happen because we are dreaming this together, holding our hands together, exploring our potential, and even the resources that we can be able to mobilize to expand this kind of initiative, bringing in one women caucus at a time. Our expectation, as my colleague said, is that it's going to create room for building an inclusive future where women are not just participants, but leaders in our economies and our governments. I thank you. I just remembered. I would like to introduce our chair from the DDP, Dr. Devi Rajab, to share her message of support. Thank you.
Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and that's very nice to see a mixed group, because one can't really exist without the other. In fact, even our oppression is there on account of the other. I'm not mentioning you each by name because you've already been acknowledged. And I would rather start by saying what a great pleasure it is to welcome you all today. Our sisters, sorry that I gather that people from Malawi were not able to come today, but Zimbabwe, together with KwaZulu-Natal, on the occasion, this very, very important and significant occasion. And I would like to take the opportunity to thank the DDP team for making sure that this happens under the brilliant leadership of our CEO. So Empower Her is a very catchy term. It's the Tripartite Women's Caucus Summit is a groundbreaking initiative. And so you are actually the leaders of this initiative. And it is born out of a common commitment to advance women's rights, empowerment, and political involvement in the region. It aims, as you say in your little blurb, to create a powerful platform for collaboration, exchange, and joint action to overcome our common challenges and to promote gender equality across our borders. So the conceptualizers and the initiators of the summit need to be praised for their wonderful foresight and positive outlook. It behoves the rest of us to make sure that this engine never stops moving upwards and reaching out to the greater African continent, which Paul has reassured us is going to happen. So today I feel politically really honored because I think it's an important annual conference with a message of support, which I am so pleased to give as chair, as the first woman chair of DDP. Thank you. In today's geopolitical climate of uncertainty and chaos, we are witnessing a battle between democracies and autocracies, between capitalism and communism, where ethnic conflicts have led to genocide, racial targeting, and full-scale wars. More than ever, the world needs to move away from this big man theory of leadership, where weak men have unprecedented power and strong people generally, and women in particular, have been kept at bay or behind bars. So the global leadership figures estimate that men make up 78% of parliamentarians, 93% of elected heads of state, 82% of government, and 95% of corporate executives. And what a mess they have made of the world today. It is time now to look closer at gender representation. How long will men rule the roost despite the challenges of the march of the sisterhood? Does a sisterhood exist in the same way as a brotherhood does? The nationalists had their Broederbond, the English had their country clubs, and the Jews and the Muslims had exclusive male use of the mosques and the synagogues. In each of these male-dominated institutions, there was a designated space for women. For centuries now, men have also dominated the arena of politics until the suffragettes rose to challenge men to recognize women's voices. Today, sadly, in many parts of the Middle East, Afghanistan, and Saudi Arabia, and sub-Saharan Africa, women are treated as third-class citizens, or even worse. Gender mutilation is still happening. African proverbs further hint to our subjugation. Women have no mouth. This is a proverb from Betty. The hen knows when it is morning, but she looks at the mouth of the cock and waits for the cock to crow. A Shanti proverb. And I think, this is built into our DNA, in a very kind of a casual way, but it's quite endemic to how we think even about ourselves as women. In more progressive societies, as women move into the corridors of power and begin to take their place at boardrooms alongside men, they are being challenged to examine their effectiveness in asserting themselves the way men do. Across cultures and throughout the years, women have learned different styles of speaking to men, which often can make them appear more emotional, less competent, and self-assured than they really are. Although little girls are developmentally ahead of their male counterparts by 2 years, males soon surpass them as they learn to use more forceful speech patterns that equip them for the work arena. Politeness gets women nowhere in a male culture of divisive and decisive aggressiveness. Often, women attending seminars and meetings complain that they never get a chance to speak because they find themselves waiting politely, until the males are finished talking, which invariably never happens. But despite women's so-called ineffectiveness in communication stakes, their politeness sometimes pays off by boosting the morale of others around them. Rather than take advantage of their own leadership positions, leaders in all feminine groups tend to encourage their members to speak up. Leaders amongst men, on the other hand, usually dominate and resist suggestions that come from the group. In this respect, I think this is our strength as women. We are better facilitators, we are better listeners, and we are better at participatory democracy from the classroom to the boardroom. Robert Kiyosaki claims that the first culture that can blend men and women's strength will be the next world power. Indeed, the idea that women make better leaders than men is beginning to gain ground. Women's leadership style is about collaboration. It's about relationships, and it's about nurturing talent. One woman says in an article about her difficulties, she says, and here I am as a CEO of Coca-Cola or whatever, and what am I thinking as I'm going up the ladder? Who's looking after my kid out there? Is the child okay after I left it? And so and so and so. So naturally, we as women have that strength to care and to feel and to nurture. Men, it is claimed, are too individualist, too competitive and aggressive, too lacking in feminine interpersonal skills to lead in this new arena. In the face of terrorism and religious fanaticism, how would women leaders fare, one thinks? Currently, as we're experiencing a genocide, one often thinks, if these leaders were women, would we kill all those children? Would they be able to forge a strong sisterhood? Would we be able to cross that barrier across class, across culture, across religion and nationality to view our world as one? As in the case of Palestine or Ukraine, can a new leadership among women overcome a growing myopic nationalism? Would Israeli and Palestinian women or Russian and Ukrainian women have sought another situation or another solution? To do so, a political solidarity would have to be forged amongst women globally. Now, more than ever, we need to act globally to stem the rising tide of illiberal trends of nationalism, of populism, of authoritarianism that is threatening the world peace. Can we do this as African women? There's a poignant scene in a film out of Africa. Before she leaves Kenya, Karen Blixen, whose coffee farm is razed to the ground and whose personal life is in tatters, tries to negotiate an equitable deal for the local people who she's leaving behind. And she goes to the High Commissioner and begs him to give a tract of land on which these poor people can reside. She begs the High Commissioner, who is non-committal. What Blixen does next is a powerful act of subservience. She kneels on the ground as a baroness and refuses to get up, at which point the commissioner's wife comes to her rescue, assuring her that she will make sure that her plea is met. This is an act of sisterhood, is what we all aspire for on our emancipation as women. In the latest book on Mandela and Winnie, there's a scene, or there's a section where apparently Fatima Mir, who was more than a sister to Winnie, went actually on her fours and begged Nelson Mandela not to divorce Winnie. That kind of sisterhood, good or bad, is another question one would answer. But beyond all our differences of class, of race and political affiliation, nationality and religion, can we cross that barrier? The African continent is in urgent need of good leaders from all communities and in all walks of life. In reality, there are many talented women out there, from the arts to the sciences, to politics, to law, to business management and healthcare. I completed a book on Indian women from indenture to democracy, and I discovered the amazing talent that actually was there, that was unmined talent. And so we see this as wasted resources. In politics, South Africa boasts a high number of female members of parliament, ministers, and provincial administrators at a national and local level. Yet there is no formal training that they are expected to undergo to prepare them for these roles. And this applies to men as well. True, South Africa has spawned great leaders in all walks of social and political life who haven't had a formal education. We know that, we can see that. Their education has come instead from being in the trenches, from a richness of their life experiences. That's where their education came from. However, in today's world of super knowledge, we need to develop a competitive edge that demands a different type of expertise that is not only political in nature. I want to repeat this because I think this is a very important aspect. We don't have to have political leaders only if they've had a political background or they have a political party to support. Our leaders should emerge not only with struggle credentials, but also with true expertise, with knowledge, with talent and commitment to building a vibrant Africa in particular, South Africa in particular, in Africa in general. Thus far, we have tended to call for the emergence of women as a particular form of affirmative action to address past discrimination. But as we, as women activists, need to agree that we want the best amongst us and certainly not token appointments to be manipulated. So my challenge to you, ladies and gentlemen, today is to be unafraid to claim your rightful place in the political arena of your country as a woman, but to do so strategically with the support and the backing of an enlightened sisterhood. Each one of us has a duty to lift each other up if we want to make a real difference in the world. In doing so, we should contemplate on whether race, ethnicity, religion, language is more important than who we are as women. I thank you.
We'd like to invite Ms. Hazel Gooden, who's joining us online from the UN. Please don't panic with time. I got you. I got you. Welcome, Ms. Gooden. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can, loud and clear. Can you hear me as well?
Yes, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Program Director. Good morning, everyone. Honorable parliamentarians, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I wish to stand on the protocols as observed and to thank you for giving me the floor as I speak on behalf of UN Women. It is a privilege and it's an honor to join you, albeit virtually, here today. UN Women is quite excited to have partnered with the Democratic Development Program, KwaZulu-Natal Legislature, to host this tripartite conference under the theme, Empower Her, which is, as you know, is putting the spotlight on the issue of gender equality and women's leadership in politics and decision-making. We commend you for all the efforts to promote gender equality, including pushing for the implementation of national and regional normative frameworks. We are encouraged by the cross-country learning and sharing of strategies that will happen here today and beyond. Over the last few years, working together with our partners, UN Women has been at the forefront of the acknowledgement of advancing and being at the forefront of advancing gender equality through our programming and support. Over 80 parliaments all over the world have been supported to enact gender-responsive laws and budgets, enhancing parliamentary oversight, and adopting institutional policies with the aim of increasing the number of gender-sensitive parliaments worldwide. UN Women stands ready to continue working with parliaments and particularly the women's caucuses to achieve gender equality and social justice for women's rights. Honorable members, you have an important role in contributing to the creation of a more gender equal society. As both the lawmakers and overseers of legislation, you can be the key drivers of change. We've heard the statistics. We've heard that nearly 3/4 of the world's members of parliament are men. We are at a stage where it is critically urgent. At the current global rate of change, it is estimated that gender parity in national legislative bodies will not be achieved before 2063. This is not acceptable. I'm sure you would agree with me when I say we need to do more. Your leadership can help ensure that women are part of the decision-making in equal numbers by advocating for the adoption of well-designed temporary special measures, including ambitious gender quotas to achieve the goal of 50-50 at all levels of elected positions, as agreed by member states during the 65th session of the Commission of the Status of Women and as captured in the Maputo Protocol. Currently, more than 2.5 billion women and girls worldwide are negatively affected by discriminatory laws. Legalized and institutionalized misogyny remains present on the African continent. Discriminatory laws hold back women and girls from reaching their full potential, no doubt. Ladies and gentlemen, repealing discriminatory laws and following up on their implementation is a matter of urgency. No one is better positioned to do this than you. Honorable members, be bold and take the lead in transforming parliaments into more inclusive institutions. You've heard from our previous speaker calling for the same. Set an example for others. This is possible by strengthening women's voices through their balanced representation in the world of parliamentary committees and/or through dedicated women's parliamentary networks. Through our work with parliamentary women's caucuses for years, we have seen how effective these parliamentary bodies are working across political parties and around common goals for gender equality and women's empowerment. Violence and harassment against women in public life has increased as more women have gained access to power. Despite disturbing levels of violence against women, MPs and most parliaments still lack sexual harassment policies for parliamentarians as well as staff. So again, as a matter of urgency, parliaments must adopt and effectively enforce institutional codes of conduct, establish monitoring and reporting mechanisms, or revise existing ones, stating zero tolerance for sexual harassment, intimidation, and any other form of violence against women in public as urged by the United Nations General Assembly. Several countries have adopted special laws to tackle violence against women in politics, while some amended their existing anti-violence legislation to incorporate the aspects of political and public life. We must do everything in our power from wherever we sit to ensure that discrimination, harassment, and violence against women in politics and public life do not stop younger generations of women from becoming leaders as well as parliamentarians. Honorable members, the task for us all now is to achieve Sustainable Development Goal number 5 and leave a lasting legacy of a world where women and girls in all their diversity have the same rights as enshrined by the international human rights treaties. Your action for making gender equality a reality is critical. UN Women stands ready to collaborate with you and support the outcomes and recommendations of this momentous occasion that we have convened here today. I thank you for your kind attention.
I'd like to invite there she is, Ms. Claire Musonda from the SADC Parliamentary Forum. Ms. Claire? Please unmute. Thank you.
Good morning, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. If I may request that I show my video, I think my network is not very strong. So maybe that will help to avoid any disruptions, hopefully, with your permission.
Permission granted.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable members, allow me to rely on the protocols already established. It is an honor to address you, for me to address this august assembly of women leaders representing 3 of the 16 SADC member states, of which 15 are members of the SADC Parliamentary Forum. And the 3 countries are Malawi, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. I recognize Malawi in absentia, as they were part of the program. From the outset, allow me to highlight and reiterate the commitment of the SADC Parliamentary Forum to gender equality and women empowerment. Distinguished delegates may wish to note that from inception, the forum has been fully to the promotion of gender equality and women's participation and leadership at all levels in our region. And the forum has never wavered from this aspiration. It is notable in this regard that the constitution of the forum in Article 6 does specifically provide that one of the objectives of the forum is to promote the principles of human rights, democracy, peace and security, regional integration, human and social development, economic governance, and gender equality through collective responsibility within the SADC region. Added to this, within its governance structure, pursuant to Rule 42 of its rules of procedure, the forum has established a standing committee on gender equality, women advancement, and youth development. The mandate of this standing committee is to deal with issues of gender equality, among other things. In executing its mandate, the standing committee monitors and analyzes government policy, development, law reform, and program implementation in SADC member states with a view of promoting inter alia gender equality. In addition to this, the forum has established the Regional Women's Parliamentary Caucus, RWPC, as a platform for lobbying and advocacy for equal and equitable representation of women in political decision-making positions in SADC member states. The caucus is a very important and special regional platform, and all chairpersons of national women parliamentarians, caucuses, and female representatives of the forum are members of this regional caucus. Apart from advocacy and lobbying for women's equitable representation, the RWPC also provides a great opportunity for women to mobilize on the women's agenda for equality, equity, and effective representation of women in both parliament and political parties. The RWPC is also a capacity development.
I don't know if you can hear me. If you don't mind, Ms. Masandi, could you please record a message for us and we will play it afterwards because we're struggling to hear you. Or I don't know if you can hear that. Please give a thumbs up if you're good with that. All right. So we're just going to hear from Ms. Masindu from a recorded thing because we cannot hear her clearly, if that's okay with everybody. We're good to go? Yeah. As we've seen, we have a room full of phenomenal women. Here at the DDP, we practice what we preach. You saw that we have formidable women at the helm with Dr. Rajab. And I'm just about to introduce another great woman, which is Honorable Mabato. She is Deputy Speaker of the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Legislature. Honorable Mabato Tembe was born and grew up in Durban. She matriculated from Queensburg Girls High School. Tembe graduated from the University of KwaZulu-Natal with a degree in social sciences, majoring in psychology and anthropology, before she graduated with an honors degree in counseling psychology. She also has earned a certificate in project management from the University of Cape Town, alumni. Honorable Tembe worked as a research assistant to the Deputy Vice Chancellor of the Durban University of Technology. She then became an academic development advisor at the Health Sciences Department of the university. In 2014, she joined the DA in Ward 33 and became a secretary of the Central Durban constituency, where she also served as Dawn and Adak representative. 2 years later, she was elected as eThekwini Metro Councillor and served on both the eThekwini Economic Development and Community Services Committees and as a whip for 2 terms. On 7 December 2021, Tembe was sworn in as a DA member of the KZN Provincial Legislature, where she served as a member of the Social Development Portfolio Committee, Quality of Life Standing Committee, and DA KZN Legislature Caucus spokesperson. Following the 2024 provincial and general elections, she was elected as the Deputy Speaker of KwaZulu-Natal Legislature, making her one of the youngest people to be elected to the Speakers of Office in the country. I think that deserves a hand. She is currently the Democratic Alliance KwaZulu-Natal Caucus chairperson. She heads the Ethics, Privileges and Contempt KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Legislature Committee, a member of Women's Caucus Committee and Programs Committee. Please help me give a warm welcome to KZN Legislature Deputy Speaker, Honorable Mama.
Good morning, everyone. It's very disconcerting hearing people talk about your life that way. But it's also very good. I was feeling like, oh, I haven't done a lot with my life, but thank you for that. Good morning to all the formidable women that I see before me. And I definitely follow in the footsteps of many women that are here today, this morning. Program Director, thank you so much, Buhle Motseme. I hope I'm saying that correctly. DDP Executive Director, Dr. Paul, so an honor to see you again. DDP Board Chairperson, Dr. Devi Rajab, honored to have you here today. Representation from the UN Women, Hazel Gooding, and my very privilege and honor, KZN Legislature Speaker, Honorable Nontombeko Boyce. The delegation from the Zimbabwe Women, I hope I said that correctly. Honorable Honorable Ongwe, from the Malawi Caucus joining us online this morning. The KZN Legislature Deputy Chairperson, Honorable T. Kali, good morning. And my sister, the Legislature Chairperson of Quality of Life Standing Committee, Honorable Fikile Masiko. All the delegates and honorable members that are present here today. The KZN Legislature Secretary, Honorable Narusha Naidu, and the Program Director, Honorable Nyasha as well, who's co-program directing as well. Good morning to everyone. What a privilege it is to be part of you guys today to welcome the women's caucuses of all three countries in such a prestigious event of powerful women. Women who are dedicated to driving transformation agenda in all spheres of life in diverse societies in their countries. Indeed, this gathering is for all of us today, and it marks one of the biggest milestones in the journey of women in our respective countries. It is quite inspiring that as diverse as we are in the terms of our countries of origin, we have one thing in common, a determination to remove all forms of discrimination against women. We do this in a world where full participation of women in political, economic, and social exclusion is the order of the day. A world characterized by patriarchy, we share a common vision and destiny to empower her, to go out there and to form a greater force to collapse all forms of patriarchy in our communities. The gathering of caucuses and the summit today, I believe and I hope and I know will happen, must find ways to recreate and to rethink economic and social policies and reevaluate what needs to be prioritized to women in our communities. As we network and engage in our discussions, we must find ways to provide and to empower her with self-development tools. We must inspire her and instill innovation in her and enable her to seek and to take leadership roles in their families and in their communities. I keep referring to her in bold because we want to empower her. I think I'm falling in love with the theme of the summit, to empower her, because I myself am a woman empowered. At this juncture, I wish to make a call to all women in leadership positions, women like my fellow Democrats and colleagues from all neighboring countries who are here today, and we must take up this challenge. And the challenge is put gender equality, social justice, sustainability, the center of all to free all women. This must remain our priority as women in leadership positions, so that with all our powerful influences in business and in government, we are able to lift others and
Recording in progress.
Specifically, the former chairperson of the Multi-Party Women's Caucus of KwaZulu-Natal in the sixth term. The one who was the torchbearer, CQ Queen Madloba. I felt that I must pay first homage to this phenomenal woman that during her term and tenure, honorable members and guests, the Women's Caucus started not only to lay foundation, but also building the center pillar of the house of the ancestors. Where I come from, there is a rendezvous. When you are building ceremonies, you lay the foundations. But as you lay the foundation, you already know where the fireplace will be by putting the pillar at the center. Mamzimela, we know that you did it because you were told to do so, not by anybody else, but by yourself. You could have been elected and have not done it if you did not accept what comes of leadership. We thank you for that. But I want to also, for where women parliamentarians are going to engage on their journey towards attainment of the ever-elusive gender equality in our democracies. I particularly said in our democracies because as we stand in parliaments, we get elected to parliamentary or legislature positions because there is democracy. The understanding from a revolutionary perspective is that democracy allows all of us to be, but it has not been the case for she. She has not really thrived over the past long life of democracy, including in the oldest democracy.
Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
by how women are allowed to access resources that will build them and ensure that they, when they are elected into position, they perform. Not just perform satisfactorily, but perform towards ending the gap that is there between us. I know that sometimes we say this is due to lack of funding, but sometimes I say it is due to the lack of the will. And I see this ideal, what we're starting today, because with the Tripartite Women's Caucus leading the way, it will afford us opportunity to address not only a limited audience in your Women's Caucus where you will be leading, but to address issues that will be affecting women across women caucuses, that's across borders of countries that we have. But it will also, as a beginning, noting that it's Zimbabwe, South Africa represented by KZN and Malawi, it already says there is a route that we have before us to ensure that in SADC, we do not just leave footprints, but we entrench like how the Sand people did in the caves. However, we might try and think that we will forget them. We will not forget them because they left their craft there, and their craft speaks for them centuries and generations later. The decisions that would be taken and the outcomes of this platform created by you, DDM, and these caucuses will live longer and ensure that women, generations of women, Deputy Speaker is among the generations that are younger than me. But also in the legislature, there are also much younger generations of women, like the chairperson of the Portfolio Committee of Sports, Arts and Culture, must ensure that they also participate so that when they lead, they also lead on something that they have built. And when we become tired because of age and experience, they don't only push us to move forward, but they propel us with a new energy. I am saying this because when we meet together, it would also create a space that is needed for participation broadly by young women in politics in Africa, in Southern Africa, and also in our independent countries. And thus, we will ensure that the footprints of today will continue. I know that women's caucuses make significant strides in advancing gender equality and women's rights in the individual countries that they may be coming from, but it is the same globally. These caucuses bring together parliamentarians from various parties to coordinate efforts and accelerate progress that is aimed at ensuring gender equality. Whilst they are doing that, they face a lot of obstacles. The first of them, Secretary of KwaZulu-Natal, is the funding that is given to the multi-party women's caucuses in the sector that we are leading. We are also, when we are here, note that were it not for the benchmarking of KwaZulu-Natal, some of the things that took place in the previous term would not have happened because Honorable Madlopa led the women to Zimbabwe. But it is truth that we cannot hide. When Honorable Madlopa led women to Malawi, it is not the KwaZulu-Natal legislature that paid, it's DDP. Through the collaboration and efforts that were forged outside the legislature by the chairperson and the steering committee of the Women's Caucus. When we are here today, we want to say to the women of the 7th term in KwaZulu-Natal legislature and all women, this work was never meant for you personally. It was meant for all women. The women of the 6th term ensured that they make us ready. And when we are ready this term, we must also know that the women of the 6th, 5th, 4th term are seen, heard, and never forgotten. I thought that I must first dwell on that, but I also thought that as we are here today, we must start understanding what is it that we are waging a war against. We are waging a war against an establishment. Patriarchy is an establishment. It is entrenched. It is popular. It is popular because it has power. And the power they have, they understand that it is a currency that has a value. Patriarchy has been using the currency of the power they have to ensure that when women start to come together, there would be systemic ways to divide women. But I must say, these women's caucuses are going to lead us to move from that and ensure that we come together as women. But we must also understand that the war we are waging is going to be war against resources. Resources that we don't have no access to. I mean, our counterparts have been beneficiaries over generations. I mean, in the context of South Africa, even before the 1994 democratic breakthrough, they have been benefiting and they continue to benefit and they build on that. They raise amongst us and within us children of our own wombs to also take over the work that they have started, never to look in the side of what is it that we stand for. So I want to call to these countries that have already come together that do not waver, but DDM, empower her, so that the empowerment that you've given would also transfer to us as members of the caucuses. The empowerment will also ensure that the solidarity among women members of legislatures and parliaments goes beyond the corridors of those parliamentary buildings. It will go through to the women in political parties, especially those who are participating in women formations. I always believe that if we want to really tackle this issue, we must go to women that are in active politics, because through their action or inaction in their individual parties, they are already entrenching what is existing there. The policies that are in our political parties must ensure that they strive for what we say we strive for when we get to power, because we understand politics of proportional representativity may sometimes say, this is not what my party expects of me. This we will do if we move together and allow ourselves to be led, be led to tackle not only narrow or close issues, but broader regional and continental agendas of women's, so that the women's caucuses are no longer seen as that platform of speaking about the inch of a shoe to wear, the length of a sleeves a parliamentarian must wear when coming to the House, not be expected for us to only dwell on those things. The sixth term taught us that being in a women's caucus, you can do more. So when we do that, we will be able to go to the women where they are, be it women in rural areas, be it women in transitional camp in the south of Durban, be it women in the areas that we may say when we are here, it's rural areas, but it's women who are in areas of high oppression in the farms, the women that are landless, the women that do not have access even to their ancestral burial grounds because they are living in farms and in farmland, and they are dispossessed of the citizenship and occupation whilst they are still waking up in a place that their grandfathers and all those before them were born in. We will do this by coming together and mobilizing more women to participate in politics. Participation in politics will not only need you to be an active member of a political party, whilst that I think is also important, but it will also be assisted by what I have learned over the past month, Honorable Mavimbela, that the UN does for women in Tanzania and in Zambia, and I'm sure it is doing for the women, UNDP is doing for women maybe in Zimbabwe, when they go to the grassroots to ensure that there is development and provision of resources for women in politics and in parties. Not to say that women must be only on the side that is not active in politics, in civil society only, but going to women in politics. But we will also do that by ensuring that the quotas and affirmative action that in countries like Africa has been existent since 1994 are no longer just quotas and affirmative action policies exist, but are existing by when you go inside a place of leadership, you notice women, not women who are deputizing others, but women who are key decision makers. When you go into a place, you come and you do not get surprised when you see the position occupied by 6 people, and you must know that when you see 4, you no longer assume that probably the 2 are the personal assistants to the men there. When you know that these 4 may be the real leadership that is there, probably the others are just there to assist. I am making an example of this because sometimes we think that there is a position that is lower than another. Positions are equal, but the influence is not the same. For as long as women are not in key areas of the economy, in South Africa, we have celebrated having women in international relations. We've held women that were leading also in the space that we thought is very key in defining how we go forward, the parliament. When we started in 1994, our first speaker was a woman. But moving beyond that, yes, we want presidency of women in countries throughout, but I also do want a minister of finance, because gender budgeting starts there when important micro and macroeconomic decisions are made. When we ensure that before that woman becomes a president, there is an economy that is growing, so that we do not say they failed, yet the conditions were already against them. We must strive to know and understand equality in positions, but we must never be fooled by people saying that everything is the same. Influence is not the same. It goes back to the issue of currency. We must celebrate when we need to celebrate because there are more women, but we must also be able to say, okay, they are there, then what? How much room do they have to effect the change that we desire? And that is what I think is going to come out here. Because as we embark on this journey, I believe that we are going to be educated. We would be better educated in understanding new ways and innovative ways that have been used elsewhere in some other countries. Because while it is essential to have more women in parliament and in other leadership positions, impact and influence will entrench the hegemony of women leadership. We know, those of us who were lucky to find themselves as residents of KwaZulu-Natal, we know that you cannot go through the history of the Zulu kingdom without mentioning 2 key women that also played a role there, because they did not just become there and set. But when they were there, they ensured that they got the truth. We need women that will be allowed that position. And being here today, through empowerment, it is going to be possible. Taking lessons from what individual countries have achieved through women's caucuses, whether it's in promoting women in leadership, but actually when they are there, the driving of policy changes on issues affecting women and ensuring that there is proper oversight on the implementation of the laws that have been passed. It doesn't assist us that we'll have progressive laws, and yet those progressive laws do not get to be the reality that is lived by every woman and every citizen in a country. I know that it is not going to be an easy journey, and along the way, we will have more missed opportunities. Some will be more missed through the divisions amongst us as women, but also because, as I said earlier, the war on the other side is already well established. It is actually the establishment itself. But we must, even without resources, know that when you are empowered, you are able to break ground. Otherwise, those who led the struggle, especially in Southern Africa, who had nothing, might not have led us to where we are today because they had no resources. And I believe that that is the main reason that compels parliaments and all women to work together. The issue of ensuring that beyond resources and everything, when you are empowered, you will be able to achieve and go a longer road that you would have done ordinarily. I am also saying this because I am remembering what the women of Africa did in the 80s when they convened the first Women's Summit in Nairobi, the same Nairobi that this year again was hosting the All Africa Women's Summit. I believe that at the time it was called Maibongwe and Malibongwe, as they were preparing for the rest of Southern Africa that was to be released from the shackles of apartheid. Those women may have had nothing, but they were able to bring the women of the world because they even invited women that were progressive senators in the United States of America so that they go back and ensure that they call for the rights of women even in Africa. So I thought that when we start this platform and you ensure that you make this platform work, you can move faster towards the realization of our goals. In our provincial legislatures and individual countries, we may have suffered already the setbacks and missed the opportunities. For instance, Chairperson of DDP, as you know, we have declined in the number of women in this current term. The decline is not necessarily because the population of women has declined. It has declined because there is no anchor in our country in terms of legislation that compels us to have a certain number of women elected. We must then, once we have declined, celebrate and learn from countries like Namibia and Rwanda, who seem to be the torchbearers currently in Africa in terms of women representations. Because when we celebrate them, we will be able to learn. We are not celebrating them because we think that we can never achieve it or it was easy for them. But we celebrate them understanding that Mamu Charlotte Maxeke taught us that the work we do is not for an individual, and it is for others. Wherever there is a win, therefore, for any of us as countries that need women representation, it is a win for all of us as we urgently lose the importance of the self. The importance of the self will hinder some of the important directions that we need to take. And we must know that coming together will not make any country lose its sovereignty, but we must focus on what brings us together. beyond what would set us apart, be it innate legislations and constitutions of the various countries that may come together. But what brings us together is the struggle for gender equality. And on that, we must not compromise. We must ensure that we move with the necessary speed for the creation of a safe space for empowering women in order to rise, regardless of how much resistance, limited resources, and cultural backwardness may stand in their way. In the same vein, this international collaboration, because already it's an international collaboration, is vital in ensuring that whatever you are doing in your little corner is going to be in a spotlight. Open yourselves, therefore, to be critiqued and also to be built, but also open yourselves to learn and unlearn from others that you are going to meet. I do not believe that that Honorable Madlopa did not want to learn from others, Honorable Mbowa did not want to learn from others, we would be here today. They have ensured that after we have learned, they also create a space for all of us to learn. So we need to rise and protect women, be it against gender-based violence, which is very high currently, discrimination. But we must also be cognizant that our fight must also be waged on the plight of women, especially in the diaspora, where there is war. The rights of women are affected, and that indirectly affects you, even if your country has peace. I don't think that women can say we are having a peaceful existence whilst DRC is where it is. The rest, I don't want to go to country by country, but allow me to mention DRC, Western Sahara, Yemen. But the world will never be in peace for as long as Palestinian women are killed every day. The world will never know peace because any woman and children that is disallowed to go to school, to go to work, would become a forever dependent and will live a life of being a child. Once you are a child that is above pensionable age in my country, you are living in the threat that you will be killed any moment. We cannot allow that to continue because we know what it is to be women in distress. We have seen in the times of Winnie Mandela how she was tormented, arrested, and having people knocking at her door day and night. That is not the life that we want our children to live. That is not the life that I dream for my daughters and granddaughters. I dream of a better life. I dream of women that will live as equal partners with their brothers, that will live as equal brothers and sisters with the world, not mattering where you come from in Africa. But what matters would be that you are a human being. And being a human being would be what matters and comes first. It would not matter what religion you believe in. It would not matter to an extent of hearing people putting someone in the line of being killed because of religious beliefs. It will never matter. But what must matter for our children must be what the world has to offer and what they have to offer the world to make it a better place for all human race to thrive. This, I want to say once more, it will not happen if there's no peace in Palestine and the entire Gaza, if there's no peace in Yemen, if there's no peace here in Africa. Especially, we are now enjoying to call it the war-torn Gulf of Africa, as if that is how we should call it. For as long as there's no tolerance amongst us in terms of understanding that we may be different in terms of nationality, but for as long as we do not tolerate someone who does not come from your ethnic background and does not have the same skin color like yourself, we will not have peace. And no women will strive. I believe that women will deal with this because in this collaboration, as you learn, you will also unlearn. old ways of doing things and move with ways that are going to be progressive and take us closer to the achievement of the Maputo Protocol and the realization of SDG 5, so that we can go back then to our parliaments to enact laws that will allow all women to be able to live the life that human beings are supposed to be living. I am saying this once more to remind you that whilst numbers are important, we must further go beyond numbers. What is the effect that you have in the position that you are occupying in a power or a sphere of government? How does it change the lives of women? How does it bring the struggle closer to its logical conclusion? If we don't ask these questions from us, and if you don't ask us who are given these positions, then we don't deserve to be gathered here today. We must gather here today because we are prepared to make each other accountable. The positions we are in are not our personal positions. These are positions of women and are occupied on behalf of women and the entire human race that we have to change. If we wait and think that being a woman in power is a disability, we have to think for you and be measured differently. And it means that I am a wrong person for the Secretary of KwaZulu-Natal Legislature because I expect differently. And the party I come from expect differently from me. As a revolutionary, I want to close by saying that this platform, we must use it for what it is meant to realize our long-standing dreams as women and of those women before us, but also to secure the future of women that will come after us. We must protect this collaboration provided by our partners and ensure that our leadership does not just pay lip service to the issues that affect gender equality. This we must do by opening ourselves to understand that there is more than one issue that is affecting the progress of women. The issue of dissettlement of women must be attended to. The issue of citizenship and identification in women must be attended to. But the issues that pertain to transgender women must, and all queer persons, must be attended to. We must be able to say, what is it that is mine and what is it that is for the people, so that we ensure that regardless of the choices and who people they are, we do not make them live a life that is substandard. As sometimes I have seen the plight of transgender women in the world, not only in South Africa, probably they are protected by the Constitution, but what protect queer persons elsewhere? What is it that we bring to their doors every day? We must not shy away. I know we will differ. Where I go, whenever I go and stand and be allocated to sit in the Human Rights Commission, in the Commonwealth Parliamentarians Association, I know that we will differ. But I know that I will even differ with women that I have many things that I agree with, especially those that South Africa has got a good history with. But I also know that in issues of religious fundamentalism, we will also differ. And we must not be afraid to raise those things here, but don't focus on what will be dividing us. Rather, focus on what will be providing us that opportunity to come together. It's important, but I am not saying we must not raise these issues. Raise them, but don't make them a hurdle to achieving much more. Because if you focus on what divides you as opposed to what brings you together, you will miss what President O.R. Tambo said back in the days when he said the reason that his party he was leading, the African National Congress, was a force was not because of its membership or its own ability. It was because it was standing on shoulders of many people in Africa that supported it. Women emancipation is not an issue of only women. We need, yes, women parliamentarians, but we also need progressive men. We need progressive men because for us to be truly a force, there must be someone who raises our issues even in our absence. For as long as we think that, when I was growing up, they mentioned that there was in the trade union, we liked to put gender to a woman until one day we asked, why? Does it need breasts? Does it need a womb? Honorable Fraser would remember that discussion. It doesn't, but it needs someone's mind and heart that is in the right place. And in this platform, we must not miss that out, because we will not become a force. We need to be a force and stand on shoulders of everyone, be it the UN, be it DDP, but also progressive men must be brought in, because these men are the same. So go can speak to their sons and ours right until tomorrow as KwaZulu-Natal legislature because of the competing programs. But we are happy that we will be with the members from Zimbabwe in our TLTP tomorrow because we are a force. Thank you.
To energize the troops from Zim, KZN, and Malawi to know that we are in a war and we've got a lot of work to do in order to ensure that we realize the potential that women have and the role that they need to play in ensuring that we emancipate women and increase their political participation. So I think before we go for tea break, I would want to ask the Honorable Chairperson of Zimbabwe Women's Caucus, Honorable Maybe Mboa, to just give a word or two before we go for tea. Honorable Maybe, the platform is yours.
Around the corner, around the corner, around the corner of Parliament. Madam Bo, you made me in a war zone.